Hi, everybody. My name is JJ Asgar, and thank you for joining us for the IBM Developer Stream. I'm here with three friends from Red Hat today. How about we start with Jay? Who are you?
My name is Jason. Let's try that again. Jason Dobies. I also go by Jay, and I am now a proud owner of a Vim Adventures license for the next 6 months.
Yay! And I have another friend here. His name's Brian. Who are you?
Hey, so my name is Brian Tanis. Man, I am also a Red Hat developer advocate on the same team as Jay. I focus on OpenShift. Apparently, I got something in my throat.
Uh-oh, that's not good.
You're still ahead of me because I forgot to actually mention both Red Hat or advocate. So
that's all good. Then I tied it together, right?
It's good stuff. And we have a new friend this week, Natale.
Yes, my name is Natale Vinto. I'm in the same team of Jay and Brian, and I'm from Italy. So ciao from Italia
nice.
to everyone.
Nice. That's awesome. Wonderful. We have a privilege of having Natale show some stuff off for the first portion of our stream today. It is quite late for him right now, so we're not going to make him sit around for all 3 hours because that's just mean. But we're gonna place with some stuff. But before we do that, if you haven't noticed, just as Jay's little comment a moment ago, we have Vim Adventures up here, and I tried this yesterday, and it didn't work. And now I brought Brian onto the stream because he's the one who convinced me to give this a shot. So I'm gonna force him to help me here. I am on level 7 of this thing, and I cannot for the life of me pass this little F will find your forward. Now, if you've Googled this, it turns out all you need is the capital F, the X, the semicolon, and the comma to move around. Now, I'm going to do it once, and then I'm going to have you, Brian, yell at me because I'm not going to be doing something right, and then hopefully we can figure this out. That seem reasonable?
First, I think this is a game where you're learning the Vim shortcuts to be able to move around on the keyboard a lot more efficiently. It's awesome. If you don't know, you should definitely check it out. It'll make you a lot more productive in Vim, and it's amazingly awesome. One of the things is as you're moving along, you pick up new keys. So you're constrained on the keys that you have, and the whole point is they want to teach you those particular keys. So that's what JJ you're saying. So I think the first thing, what keys do you have? You could do colon and type keyboard, or you could click on that.
Yep. So right now I have FT, comma, semicolon, G, and Z. So Z is useless here because that just moves around the buffer, right? G is to the top or the bottom.
Yep, you don't need that.
No, and it doesn't go to the end of the file, it just goes to the bottom of the file.
This is like a total F and comma and semicolon, but I think there's a trick to it. And I think I remember the trick, but let's see, I don't know.
All right, so I'm gonna go down, capital F, X, X to delete, down, and then I want to reverse, so I'm going to comma, because I went back, now I'm going forward, X, right? So I have 6 more presses to get 3 more things. Gonna go down, and because I need to go back again, I need to repeat, right? So that's semicolon, X. So I'm down to 3.
Think about that semicolon because that's your problem.
Oh, really?
Or maybe, something like that. Yeah. Well, it is the semicolon. That's what it is.
I'm intrigued at your tone, Brian. Do you know the answer? And
I'm pretty sure I remember.
Okay.
I could be wrong, and this might completely fail, but I'm pretty sure that's your secret.
Oh. Okay. So I go down again,
but you're like way past that point. It should be.
X.
I don't want to give it away.
Well, no, I've tried this one for like 4 hours now. Like this is what I've been doing before streaming, trying to get this damn thing to work. And then I'm gonna repeat it and get there. So you see, Jay, I actually got there. I actually got there this time, but now I have 0 keys to press.
When you press X, it's going to start you over.
Yep. So Brian, what am I doing wrong?
This one, I'm pretty sure you need to like go down.
Okay.
So this is the way that I think that you need to start. So type F and then the capital F, X.
Okay.
Right. Now you just need to like get back to like the top part and reset the number of characters to go. So get out of this, so move all the way to, back there. You get, so now go down 1 and semicolon.
No way.
Because it saves you that 1 keystroke. You need to like think about the.
God.
There's a couple of times in this game where like you have to do that, and this might be the first one where you have to like set your last thing that you did before you like set it and then go out and then go back in or whatever.
Oh my! It doesn't even tell you need to do that. Like there's no. Oh my good God!
It's a douche move.
It really is. Oh man.
There might be another way to solve it, but I don't think that there is. Like that one took me a while too. I don't remember how I stumbled upon that, but it took me a while.
So semicolon didn't work
because that saves you that 1 keystroke.
Oh man! All right. That was fun. Okay.
It's very much Vim golf like type stuff here is what this game's about. But it teaches you, and it's all about repetition and all that stuff, which is awesome. That's what you need.
That is true. That is very true. Well, so, I will report back next week when I'm farther in the game.
Next week, level 8.
Exactly.
Maybe farther than that. Although there are some parts of this stuff that like gets really complicated. I think I'm not done with it. I think I'm on like a level 11 or something, and I'm stuck, and I'm like, I don't even know what's going on.
There are some GitHub repos out there, people like sharing their whatchamacallit, their solving, their keystrokes.
Yeah.
But I've been pretty good about not looking at those, just because you're right. Like this is about repetition, thinking about it. Like I've already noticed I'm using FS or FS to already like start doing stuff and moving around, and I've already like stopped using the arrow keys. I'm using HJKL already. I do type in Dvorak though, so
I was just about to ask you about that because I remember you saying it. So you all over the friggin' place, just on level 1 with the directions.
Yeah, it's so like right now, like moving left or right here is my pinky up key. Moving right or left here is the J, which is my index finger, and then the up and down are what would be V and C on your normal keyboard.
That's
weird.
Completely off.
Yeah,
it's not horrible, but yeah.
At least they're next to each other, I suppose.
Yeah, which I mean, in a lot of ways, that's okay. And the most important thing I was looking for, trying to get like my Emacs out and going into Vim, was I needed to figure out how to do page up and page down, because I have no page up or page down on my keyboard, right? So learning Control D and Control U saved me so many things. It was unbelievable.
Wait, the Kinesis doesn't have a page up and page down?
Well, it does, but you have to turn on the keypad, I believe. I'm looking at it right now.
Like a laptop where you either get the number keys or end page up and page down, like that kind of stuff.
Actually, no.
Yeah, I'm over here Googling. I'm like, I have a Dvorak layout up in one tab. Now I'm having a Kinesis.
Yeah, no.
Like my keyboard has page up, page down, but it's like on the function layer, and I don't ever really use it. Like I normally just type like
right here.
I don't know, like 22J or something to go down a page is what I do.
I never think about, like, I don't ever move my fingers over to this line ever. So I didn't even think about it. I just saw it now.
Yeah, okay.
By
I'm
the way,
seeing on the
so-
left side of the space bar.
Yeah. By the way, Ryan, you are absolutely right. As a gamer, you have to rebind everything, or you just go back to QWERTY and not even think about it. And that's what I've done for some Steam games, for some FPSs, is I just like spin Steam up in QWERTY and just play with those keys, and it's just buttons now. If that makes any sense.
I never even thought about it that way.
Yeah.
Because it's funny because the gamer thing came up though, because to me, I never was in a world where I had to use HJKL. Like I've always had arrow keys, even like in college terminals. So to me, WASD is so much more intuitive for moving around that I still struggle with HJKL. I have arrows like so. This is such a dumb view and everything. HJKL is roughly there. My arrows are right here. It's not anything for me to, but I've also used this same style keyboard for close to 20 years now. So I know where everything sits, but I still use the arrows way more than any of that other stuff. Same with page up and page down though.
Yeah,
to
my
to
keyboard
Babe Kev-
forces me. No arrows.
to
That's
Babe
what
Cafe's
I
point.
got to do it.
Wait, Brian, what's your keyboard then? Are you a Kinesis? No, you're not a Kinesis guy, right? Oh God, you're on the complete opposite end.
Oh, is that the happy?
60%.
That's a happy hacking
Yeah.
one.
It's a
Oh,
rubber
God.
dome keyboard. You know, this is quality stuff right here.
Very cool.
But anyways, yeah, no, 60%.
Sorry, keep going.
No, I was just gonna say 60%. There are arrow keys, but they're also on the function layer, and I do use them, and they're easy to get to. But like, it's easier to stay on the home row like normally, if that's what I'm moving around text and Vim and stuff.
Yep.
Natale, so I don't know much about Italian. Do you have accent keys on your keyboard? Like, do you have a specific? I sound so dumb, American, and naive as I ask that.
And yes, we have accent key. This is a QWERTY, so it's not like German QWERTY stuff. And we have accent keys, so we need to. It's a different keyboard, you can see, but it's longer.
Okay.
Yeah, because we have a lot of accent, and but the weirdest one I ever seen is the Dutch one in Netherlands. It's terrible because if you have to pick the American layout, it's impossible. You can't use it. So the Italian one is very weird, but the Dutch one is the weirdest I ever seen. I've seen it was some QWERTY.
Is this it?
There was that it was with more accent and more symbol in that, at least to that the one I've seen.
Okay.
Another very weird one is the Swiss German. It's an interesting one. It's a QWERTY plus some accent somewhere.
Oh yeah, look at all that.
Yeah, Italian
all that.
Similar. Yeah.
That is gross.
Just like what is it? It's like the ISO keyboard, like the enter key. Like I don't know if I would be able to get used to that because it's such a different shape.
It's not even QWERTY, it's QWERTY, which I feel like Natale said that, but I didn't understand exactly why he phrased it that way, but now I get it. There's no why up there.
Yeah.
And then there's
I remember
I saw when you had
point,
you go, Brian.
Go. Good. I was just saying, I remember at one point somehow my keyboard like input or something got switched to some German layout, and it messed me up for the longest time to like try to get back in to edit that file and put it back to American English or US English or whatever. Yeah, that because like every time I would type like Y, it would be Z, and that threw me off.
Yeah, that's different enough where you're not going to notice it until it keeps biting you and you're like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah, it's like somewhat close, but there's differences quite a bit.
The reason, one of the reasons why an old buddy of mine convinced me to learn Dvorak specifically was he's like, you're a sysadmin, JJ. You need to secure your computers. So think of all the servers out there that you're going to have to touch. you change that key Mac to Dvorak, no one's going to be able to get into them because all the keys are going to come back as something that they're not expecting. Turns out I ended up getting fired or let go of from one company as a sysadmin. I was running their mail server at the time. And I got a call about 6 weeks later saying, JJ, how do you get into the mail server? Like all the keys don't work. And I'm like, did you like boot into single user mode? Like just went through the normal thing. And like, first of all, they didn't know about single user mode. That's a different conversation. But I was like, yeah, you just type it in Dvorak. Did you look that up? They're like, what's Dvorak? And I'm like, oh my God. I'm so glad you let me go because this company doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about.
I was about to say that. I'm like, the more you had that conversation, the more you're like, wow, I ended up in the good area.
Yep.
It's funny. I pulled up the page for these foot pedals, and the funniest part to me is it goes from single and then a module and then dual and then triple pedals. And the highest end one are waterproof pedals, which I mean, I can kind of see that as a selling point for the odd cup of coffee, but having it like with a picture of this like water hitting it and just the fact that it's sold as waterproof, just like, are we really spilling that much where our keyboard foot pedals are in danger of splash damage repeatedly? But
I will say
there's a market for it.
I will say, so here's my foot pedal, right? I actually have it connected, but the problem is if you look, the little feet here, right, don't actually make it stick to anything. So like most people, most people like you have your foot pedal underneath your desk with like a mat or whatever. So I end up like putting it against like the feet of the Janus I have, right? So it's like really far away anyway. And I just don't think about using it. I know it's here, but it's not doing what I want to. And I mean, I guess you could, like, if you always have your feet in the exact same spot, you could like duct tape it down or something like that. But then like, I'm already doing some janky shit, right? Like, do I really need to do this also? Anyway, sorry, I'm going off on a tangent.
Maybe you travel to Venice or something where it floods every now and then, you know, and like you got to have the foot pedal on the ground.
I guess you're in that, like if you're in a basement and there's like the risk, but my desktop is sitting on the ground too. I'm a lot more worried about that than my foot pedal. I like the push to talk. I think push to talk makes a shit ton of sense. You know, I do a lot of gaming just with a buddy of mine. So we just leave open mic on and you can hear all sorts of random stuff. But if I were back in like a Warcraft guild or something like that, where push to talk and like I got that pinky because you got to like figure something that's not used in game. So you're just like in the middle of everything. That's an amazing use for it. It'd probably be handy in something like not necessarily podcasting, but like meetings and stuff like that, where I find myself muting so they don't hear stupid stuff. But foot pedals and keyboards.
There's an app called Shush here. You can see here on Macs. This is one of the reasons why I came back to a Mac. Was Shush is just a really, 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 really simple app that is up here. That if you look at the preferences, the Shush hotkey was this, so I could actually rebind it. That was that's option, by the way, if you didn't know. But I could rebind my option key to my foot pedal. So when I used to be sitting in meetings for so long, I would actually just have the foot pedal underneath it, and I'd be like, you know, doing the lean back, like, why am I here kind of thing. Move my foot, start talking, and then like take it away and not have to worry about it and like start doing something else. So I strongly suggest if you have a Mac, this is worth the $5. As you can see, I did not actually have it running just now because there are some weirdness with Zoom occasionally and also streaming and all that jazz. So I've been turning it off. But for most of the time, if you're using a Mac, Shush is worth every single penny. Okay.
Interesting.
So we've completely gone off the rails, and I bet Natale is probably like being like, what the hell did I get myself into here?
I mean, in our defense, we never start on the rails. So
that's good.
Yeah, you got a point.
So Natale, we brought you here to teach us or talk to us about Code Ready Workspaces. Now, would you like to share your screen and show some stuff off? Do you want to walk me through stuff? How would you like to tell us this? How would you like to tell us about Code Ready Workspaces?
Yeah, first, thanks for this discussion. It's been very interesting. Moreover, the Vim adventures, I really like that. Yes, I would like to start sharing the screen to show you a little bit how it works.
All right, you should be able to share it just fine without a problem.
So can you see my screen?
Yep.
So this is the awesome operator app that we have inside. So this is an OpenShift cluster that I have installed somewhere in the cloud, and this is operator app. I just wanted to show you that Code Ready Workspaces is our online IDE experience.
Sorry to interrupt. Can you zoom maybe once or twice in your browser just to make sure it's big enough in Twitch?
Yeah. Plus. Is that okay?
I'd say probably one more if you can deal with the real estate. There we go. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So Code Ready Workspaces is the product name of an open source project, which is Eclipse. Eclipse comes from Code Ready Experience. Is an open source project for having an on IDE, web IDE, and today with the look and feel and user experience of Visual Studio, thanks to the TEIA integration. So what is Code Ready Workspaces is basically a Red Hat product around Eclipse, and again is an online IDE. The installation of this online IDE is really easy through operator app. So you can do in OpenShift, but also in any Kubernetes. If you go to operator app, if you don't know, it is this website. This is a marketplace of operators. I'm sure JJ gave you already a pretty good introduction about that, and I recommend it's a marvelous and awesome book about operators. But if you go in this operator app, you have a Kubernetes, you have OpenShift, you just look for Code Ready Workspace, you look for Eclipse, you can install it in your cluster, and at the end, what do you have is an operator, a Code Ready Workspaces operator, and a custom resource where you can drive the installation on these Code Ready Workspaces. So inside OpenShift, it is really cool to have the authentication with OpenShift. You can have the TLS mode. So I would like to show you that this is an online.
So sorry,
IDE.
Natale.
Yeah.
So sorry. Can I just ask the very simple question?
Sure.
Why would I use the Red Hat version instead of the Eclipse Che version, or Che, or whatever it is? Because I'm not hearing the benefit of using the Red Hat one right now.
That's a good question. Thanks for asking that. So the difference is that Red Hat gives support to the Code Ready Workspaces because that is our product. So if you want to go upstream, no support and best effort, go for Eclipse, try it out, have fun with this. But when you go, when you want to have support from Red Hat, you got Code Ready Workspaces for free together with OpenShift subscription. So if you have an OpenShift cluster, you have Code Ready Workspaces.
Nice.
This is out of the box, so it's something that you get already. And this is the main difference. So
with I have a question. So like with Eclipse Che, do you get maybe access to some of like the Red Hat middleware portfolio like you would get maybe in Code Ready Workspaces? Because you do get some of that, I think.
Yeah.
But I haven't used Eclipse Che too much.
Yeah, that's a good question. So the difference between the two is that with Code Ready Workspaces, we populate some workspace with some images that may be branded by Red Hat, or we are using one of these components of Code Ready Workspaces, since it is a multi-tenant IDE for the collaboration across team. There is a single sign-on, which is in our case Keycloak, and in the case of Code Ready Workspaces, is going to be the Red Hat SSO. So when you use Code Ready Workspaces instead of Eclipse, you have all the Red Hat products around this, like Red Hat Single Sign-On. You have Red Hat branded workspaces with the Red Hat supported runtimes or framework like Quarkus or the other framework that we support. So basically, you got the different flavor of the same software. It's all, of course, everything, all the time, always it's open source with Red Hat. The difference is just the supportability among this software. And if you look, the operator made an installation of Code Ready Workspaces in my cluster. I have the Code Ready Workspaces, I have the key clock, I have some database, I have the operator. If I want access to Code Ready Workspaces, what I have to have is just a URL. Here I have an OpenShift route, which basically is a URL binded to a services Kubernetes. But when you click on this URL here, you can benefit from OpenShift integrated authentication system. And here in this cluster, since I want to simulate a collaborative approach on Code Ready Workspaces with GitHub, I created a team in GitHub with an organization. I integrated this GitHub authentication in OpenShift, and I want to use the same authentication to let my developer team to code directly in the cluster. So they don't need to set up an environment. They don't need to set up any IDE. They just develop from the cluster and they have everything set up. This is the main dashboard of Code Ready Workspace. Actually, when you quick start, you have this view. As you see, this is for the Code Ready Workspaces one, you have JBoss. Maybe for the Eclipse J, you have Wildfly. So same software, different flavor. You have a product here. And those are the quick start that you can use to start with in Code Ready Workspaces. For instance, I was preparing some Twitch for next week for OpenShift for doing backend in Quarkus and front end in Node.js with React. And Joel from our team is helping me on this. So what I did is just clicking on one of these, create it, and then done some little customize. So for instance, I can show you that I can create some Quarkus workspace here. What this means? It means that this workspace is basically a container, which is downloading some dependencies. So in this container, so this pod, I will have all the dependency I need to compile, test locally in the workspace my code. Then when everything is fine, I can push with the Tekton integration, the pipeline to start the pipeline in the cluster, or I can deploy directly in OpenShift. This is the bootstrap of the Quarkus env, but I can show you in the while the Node.js one that I was already preparing. So I can open the Node.js one that contains the Node.js software, and I can show you the Code Ready Workspaces IDE here that will show and will load all the components. So if you look here, I have an experience very similar to Visual Studio. This is a kind of similar look and feel.
Same thing. Let me interrupt. If you can zoom in a tiny bit. Not that we necessarily need to be reading the code, but it might be a little bit easier to kind of eyeball things.
Let me view, and there should be some, because
file settings maybe, since you probably have to do it directly in there.
Plus, no. There's some kind binding. Yes, in the settings on the visualization.
There's is this where we make a joke about an accent or a tilde on his keyboard that he can't find?
So it should be view.
It'd be funny if that was actually what had happened.
Editor. So the font should be here somewhere. Tabs, not upside. I have to look where this is possible, because from view it should be possible also.
That's a good point. It should be fun.
Don't remember when, but when I was doing this from the command line, actually it was okay. Yes, it was a matter of the focus. I had the focus on the wrong place. So I hope
you were focused on the text editor or something, and it captured the command plus instead of
Yeah, so if you see, this started from a workspace, a Node.js workspace, that was containing some base for coding in Node.js. So I have my code here. This is some code that I had already. If I was cloning some repository here, I was having my GitHub integration, and I have my GitHub integration. So for any change or any Git server integration, for any change I did, I have this view diff mode that I can consult before committing or doing any change to the code. And very, very close to Visual Studio Experience, because basically the entire engine is the same. So when it's about language support, you have the language runtime support. For Quarkus, you have Java language runtime support. So you have a capability to auto-complete the code, auto-format the code. If you want to debug or start running tasks, you have this run task field here. And you can, for instance, run the web app, run in the debugging mode. So this is gonna start a job here, and we'll open. I have already something already listening here. This is gonna start some routing. So you don't have actually. This is just because I was running before. But if we can test it again. So
it's a full dev environment on OpenShift, being able to see your changes before even you need to deploy. So it's all like packaged up, and that's pretty cool. I gotta admit, that's pretty cool.
That's the best thing, I think. You can test locally before pushing to the platform. So this workspace that you have is something that you can use to test locally, and OpenShift will create a route automatically to an embedded browser here. So you test locally. When everything is fine, you push to OpenShift thanks to the OpenShift integration or the Kubernetes integration. This just to show that the Quarkus one we were doing before is active now. The Quarkus has more tasks to run with. So if I run a task here, I can start Quarkus in dev mode. That means I can change the code while I'll start, while I modify the file. If you remember, in Java mode, it was not possible. In Quarkus, you can do those kind of things. And you can automatically inject and change the code when you are working with the code. So this is basically a Maven command, is downloading all the dependencies now. At the end of this process, we will have a mini browser here where we can test our Quarkus application. And
let me interrupt with a quick question. So what is the and you might have covered this while I was situating my coffee situation. What does the multi-tenancy look like here? Like if you and I were working on this project together, would I get a URL? Would I use the same route? Would I see the same screen? Would I be able to edit files at the same time as you?
Well, it depends on how we configure all the stuff. So there is an approach where we can work on the same workspace, and we have access to the same workspace, and we work on the same workspace, or any developer have its own workspace, and to talk each other, we need to know or the route, but for workspaces, for Code Ready Workspaces, is something that is auto-generated. If you see, this is an auto-generated route. Otherwise, we can work locally in our environment. Then we push to OpenShift, and the communication is within the OpenShift project. So we can have two approach. We can,
I was going to say, couldn't you use the GitHub organization as a place for the repository, and you just use typical Git management to check out branches and all that? So two developers work that way, and then they deploy it when they need to, and then you have like a master.
We're getting back to that. It becomes if everyone gets their own workspace, the answer just is the same way you would do it with Git.
Yeah, that's what that's what it smells like right now.
Right, because in fact, if you see here, I was.
Which is a typical workflow for a lot of developers now, right? Like, like you have a shared environment where everyone can see everything if they need to, but you have your own little kingdom or fiefdom or whatever, where you're doing all your work. You push the PR up, somebody pulls it down, checks it to see it's what they're expecting it to, and then everything merges, and then OpenShift takes it from Tekton.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. That's a pretty cool pretty cool use case to implement. In fact, if you see, I've integrated this GitHub single sign-on, and I've mapped an organization, this red wine software organization. So only people.
Very Italian of you. Very,
Yeah.
very Italian.
I'm spoiling the demo of next week, but this organization is the only one that can log in here. And if you see this user, this Natale Vinto here, is a user that is present in my GitHub organization. And so this is how we can do the multi-tenancy within Code Ready Workspaces. And about the pull request one that you were mentioning, that's a pretty cool use case, because there is also in Code Ready, I can show you, there is a plugin. So once you start those workspaces, it's not finished there. What you can do is basically customize your workspaces, and you can add plugin. There is a plugin about pull requests, the GitHub pull request plugin. So if you enable this, you are able to manage pull requests directly from Code Ready Workspaces. So you can enable all the plugin that you need. This is from the UI. And I want to show this because when you want to customize for your team, let's say you want to put something here, some get started from your team. No, the cool thing is that you can create what we call in the Code Ready Workspaces terminology, the dev file. Dev file is like a Docker file for Code Ready Workspaces, containing all the information of your workspace. So you can have some URL where to start with, can be an archive or just a URL. You can put all the plugins that you need. If you see, these plugins are basically containers downloaded from some registry, can be Docker app, can be Red Hat registry. Then you can instruct the run configuration. So if you want the developer having automatically this run button where they can compile, deploy, run, test, you can prepare in the dev file. And this is another cool feature of Code Ready Workspaces, is that you can create the fabric. So the fabric is basically a generator of workspace from some Git repository. For instance, here in this example of a cloud native workshop with some microservices, I created this button. You have only to change this URL with your Code Ready one. Here we can put this Code Ready stuff here. I can, of course, increase the font and go to our fabric. Fabric, okay. Yes, if we do this, for the moment, so I've changed the cluster. I'm preparing for a developer team in my organization, this file, okay? You developer, you have to click here, and Code Ready Workspaces will create automatically some workspace starting from the definition of the dev file. This user, I'm not in this cluster. I can create only one workspaces, but just to show you that you can give this to the developer that can start from scratch from here. And if they are allowed to create more than one workspaces per project, this is a setting you set up in the operator. The result is that they can consume this dev file. So they can have all the container that they need, start from a Git repository. They have all the run configuration. They can deploy an OpenShift with some command that you can put, some bash command, some OC, CLI if you use OpenShift, kubectl. So this is really open to customization, and it's really cool to start and in a collaborative way. If you see, we have created an organization in GitHub. We have mapped the single sign-on in OpenShift. The developer can work in different workspaces or in the same workspaces with the multi-tenancy. And because the multi-tenancy is not only the one of OpenShift, so not only OpenShift mapping user in Code Ready Workspaces, but also Code Ready Workspaces has its own multi-tenancy management per workspaces. So you can select which user can use your workspace to come back to J question. So basically I can add the developer here. If I know the user of this developer, I can add here and I can let him join my workspaces that will be available from some route here. So lots of
So if you
lots of
share
things.
the workspace with somebody else, so say you shared it with me and you're both editing, or we're both editing like app.py or whatever, or app.js because it's a JavaScript app. If I say, like, do you see what I'm typing? Like, is it a live kind of a share? Or like if I save it, like you have to refresh it on your side? Like, how does that work?
So Code Ready Workspaces and Eclipse Share works with WebSockets. So we see in real time. So I don't see in real time what you do, but the WebSocket has a refresh timeout. So I can see things refreshing thanks to the WebSocket refreshing the stuff. And in fact, another important topic, if you want to use this tool, you don't have to block WebSockets. You don't imagine if you use some corporate proxy and you have some block on the WebSocket or authentication. This is a blocker for the usage of this solution. But if you have free access to internet and all the stuff, you can have this kind of a collaborative way to code directly from the browser with a Visual Studio-like experience.
Nice.
That's awesome. One of the other things is when you were looking at the dev file, there were different, the commands like to go into the developer or to go into the dev type of run view so you could, do things. How do you you showed it really quickly, but how do you, what does that map to in Code Ready Workspaces? You go to like the go, you click on go and then run or something, or how do you get to those things?
So basically, if you see, in Code Ready Workspaces, I am in the Node.js here, and I can have always, those are my run configuration that has been already configured by someone from the dev file. If I want to see what does those run configuration does, I can explore from here, and I can simulate things from the terminal. So you have access to this terminal here. And in this workspace, in this container, I have all the things that I need. So I have the npm, I can do npm build, for instance. So I can do npm install. All the run configuration that you have seen are supposing that you have some tool inside. So when you write this run configuration, you have to expect to have the tool inside. And for the example, like this example is a custom dev file, and I'm adding more command. For instance, I can add this inventory compile. It's launching a maven command, but this is expect that the workspace has the maven command inside. So you have to know which command is present in your workspace. If you want to customize this, for instance, you want to have your own workspace, you can build a container, a Docker image containing all the stuff that you need, and also you can add multiple ones. So here we are starting with a Che image, a Java 11 based with Maven, and what we are doing is basically defining what kind of limit that we have. But here we know and we expect that we have Maven. We know and we expect that we have Java. For the Node.js, it's the same thing. We know and we expect that we have Node, npm, Node command. And actually, we can also explore those because if you go here and you go to the task, you have this task list. So those tasks are basically the command that we ran before. Run the web app is a node mode app.js. because this is expected that you are in the root folder of the project here. So if we come back to our root folder of the project in app page, this is expecting you are in app.js. So when you run that command, now I modified a little bit to run the React application to have this. So those commands are not working anymore because I modified the structure, but they work in the same way you run the commands. So you can also create your own task here. It's a JSON file. You just add some block here, if you can.
Yeah, that's cool that you could extend that. Like you basically could go in and, you know, use the default, like what you're doing right now, using the default Node.js one, right? And you could take that and make your own custom dev file and maybe pass that off to like a team of people that might be working on this type of stuff or whatever, or just give them access to that workspace, which is neat.
This is the cool thing. You basically start from scratch, or at least you start from those one that we've seen here, those get started one. You start from this famous one, but let's say you want to do some Fortran or Erlang one. You can start from an Erlang containers, and you create the dev file. And then the workspace will be your Erlang container with the Erlang builder, interpreter, or whatever. And then you can add those run commands, typing them in the dev file. So you are basically programming also your IDE experience through the platform.
So yeah, next week, JJ, we're gonna have a COBOL workspace.
Hey, there it is. Careful now. I was about to say though, like I can see this environment being used like it's almost going back to it is actually kind of going back to the old mainframe ideas, right? Or dumb terminal ideas, where you have like a Chromebook or something like that that's like $100 laptop, and you could give this out to your workforce, and as long as they have access to the Code Ready workspaces, they can do all their development work into basically a Chrome browser, or Chromium in this case, and be able to actually be productive and not have to spend, you know, $500-600 on a laptop for every single person. They can actually do it through the web browser, which would drive me crazy. But I could imagine there's a lot of people out there that's all they need to do their job.
Another spin on this is Brian's silver. What the hell's the Fedora thing that we keep joking about? Blue, that's it.
Yeah.
But if you take that to a new extreme and be like, all right, it's completely immutable OS where you're not installing your local tools because they all live in the browser, then you take that to a new degree where you're like, you don't need to be able to put anything locally because it all lives in here.
A matter of time, this is going to be supported on my iPad. I know it's coming. There's issues for it. I can log in and get to this view, but I can't get to the developer terminal and all like what you're seeing now. But I mean, same thing, right? I've got an iPad. I have an external keyboard or a keyboard case or something, right? The iPad was $200. It's a big enough screen. Like I can code. It's a good resolution, like 4:3. Like it works for code. And I don't have to put anything like company IP wise on my local machines. All of this stuff lives in OpenShift, right? And I'm developing for OpenShift. So it's all there already. And I'm using the resources available. Like, this is cool. I like this idea.
Dude, once they get it working on an iPad, Brian, I want to do a collaborative talk with you where I bring like my daughter's Chromebook or something like that, and you bring your iPad and we like live code on stage on a real legitimate application and we just find the most obscure hardware imaginable to code on. Like, and I have a potato, but it's got a browser, so we're good to go.
We're building some crazy ginormous app on a Raspberry Pi that's hooked to some crazy weird USB-C display and a keyboard, and like there's that. that has
God,
no
that'd be so
processing
much
power, the iPad and the Chromebook, all of us do, like that's a cool idea. I like
That'd be
that.
amazing.
Imagine banks and government agencies who need to make sure that you only have that VPN credentials to walk into this. Like this opens up a whole world of opportunities. Like this is really cool. Like
This
in the
is
grand
really
scheme
cool.
of like corporate America, right? In the
So
grand
Natale,
scheme.
one thing, sorry if I missed this because I'm like looking at this stuff at the same time on my cluster. All of the dev file stuff I get is the environment. What about personal settings? Because as you've kind of noticed from the first conversations here, we're all pretty compulsive in Dvorak and our key mappings and stuff like that. And I'm sure the three of us, four, let's include you in this conversation, like you could swap desks and none of us would be able to get anything done because everyone else's shit is so weird. Does it do the normal, like, does it separate out individual IDE settings like colors and key mappings and things like that? And is that stored per project, or do I have to replicate that each time I jump into a new workspace? And to further add, if you don't know the answer, I wouldn't be surprised because that is a stupid question to ask, but figured I would ask it anyway.
No, it's as you said, it's per project settings. So if you want to customize your editor, you have to put in your Git repository that Teia directory containing setting JSON, and you can customize your key binding, your colors. So this is a per project setting. So when you in the so the workspace would be the container of the will be the base image for your environment, right? So you download the code, and in the code you can download it from a Git repository or a zip file somewhere. Those supported way to get the code there, and you have to put this setting JSON file where you put everything that you need that you want to customize in your experience for this browser, this IDE configuration.
Okay, that'd be an interesting blog entry, talk, whatever. Of hey, let's say you're compulsive, like really any of our audience is going to be, and you have your own settings. How do you quickly and easy make them portable across multiple Code Ready Workspace projects? Because like yes, you could check that into Git, but then if that sits side by side along with the actual project code, that's bad because that's not portable across users. And it doesn't sound like it's impossible to get your settings at JSON, but I'd be curious, like what I fall into as kind of a best practices, or like, hey, this is how I keep my environment with, because like if I don't have my keybind, like that's the worst thing is a fresh Fedora install before I get all my custom shit on there. Like it's painful.
No,
And I would,
are there plugins? Can you do like the VS Code plugins in this thing? Like for instance, like the Vim bindings, right? Is a perfect example. Is that possible to jump to inject in here? I've seen plugins for other things outside of it, but I haven't actually seen plugins for this interface.
In general, VS Code plugin works there. I don't know this particular one. Maybe we can check.
Click the button. Let's try it right now. Let's try it live. Let's see it.
I kind of love that JJ's first impression is, hey, can I get VI key bindings in this?
Yeah, well, for sure.
Yeah, the VI code bindings for Visual Studio Code work decently well. There's some weirdness I have with them, but they're okay. They work.
There's always weirdness in trying to adapt it to those.
Yeah, it's a visual graphical editor, so like it's weird, but yeah, like how do you go and add those extensions? How do you add Visual Studio Code extensions to this?
Yeah, the way is always from the dev file, so there isn't any UI way. So basically, your extension are containers that driven from the dev file. You can do from the UI at the moment. So you have basically to work here and setting things. Let me check these editors here. Can be something that you can customize. No, this is another thing. So from the dev
I
file,
think I remember on the editors, there was like, what you're looking at is the Thea, Eclipse
Yeah.
Thea IDE,
Yeah.
which looks very Visual Studio Code like, but I remember seeing like a different editor, maybe at earlier versions of Code Ready Workspaces that was like, looked a little bit more like Eclipse used to look like on the desktop maybe, or whatever, you know what I mean? So I think like
Right.
that's extensible. Yeah, that's cool.
Right. So the plugin installation is from here, from the UI in terms of this settings UI. So you from the one that you see here. For the Visual Studio one, you can try to inject them from in the dev file directly. So here you have to pick the container representing that specific plugin. Yes, I think we can also investigate. This is an interesting question also to me.
There's going to be a lot of nerds out there that want to get that done, right? Because I mean, if you look at the Visual Studio Code plugin ecosystem, it's massive. I'm not going to lie. It is truly massive. And for nerds to really adopt this, they're going to want immediately to be able to be like, I need to put my spin on this thing.
But if you see, this is a Visual Studio integration. We have the same on Code Ready Workspaces, Kubernetes, OpenShift. Also here we have the Kubernetes OpenShift, and the OpenShift specific one is cool because it's basically a UI representation of our developer command line, which is Odoo or Odoo, as you want to call. So basically from Code Ready Workspaces, you can push the code directly in OpenShift. You can create a project. You can push the code. What Odoo do is run a source to image build. So if you are aware of an OpenShift methodology on creating an application from source code, we have this source to image building system. So from the code you have in Code Ready Workspaces, it will guess the programming language or start from the programming language that it defined. So it's easy to guess the programming language. If you found a POM XML, it's going to be Java. If you found the package JSON, it's going to be Node.js. So it's going to guess the programming language and then compile the code and merge the code into a base image container. And the result will be our application running in OpenShift. If you look, there is this cool button here, edit source code. If I click here, I'm gonna be directed again to Eclipse, to Code Ready Workspaces. So if you have a team of people, okay, I can do factory because I have more than 2 workspaces. Yeah.
Sorry, it's too good.
No, that's bad. But if you have a team and you want to start, you can just click here and you go editing the code with factory building so you don't have to go to the dev file, click or do that link generation. You just click here and factory is gonna start again. This is the plugin I wanted to show you. So this is the OpenShift plugin and the Kubernetes one. Those are already connected to the cluster. You can reconnect to the cluster if you want to switch user. You can switch user. You can create project. So when you want to create an application, you basically create a component. This component drive you in the definition of what application you want to use and which programming language would be this application. This is going to generate some audio files that we can see also in the editor. So this config YAML is some configuration generated by the OpenShift plugin saying, okay, start from Node.js, expose this port, and with this URL. This means create an OpenShift route binding to a service on port 8080, using a base image Node.js, compile the source code and bring it there. So this is another way to start. After you test locally, you can have your own OpenShift project where to test things. And with Tekton pipeline integration, and Tekton will be an argument of today, so it's pretty interesting. You can start the pipeline that will be your gold image pipeline, gold image generated pipeline. So you tested everything, then you delegate to the pipeline the pushing to a dev environment, and then you can auto promote with test, unit test, or integration test the gold image across environment until the production, so somebody can approve manually this image promotion. So basically, we started coding from scratch from the IDE, and with the pipeline, we can start the release in the production from commit to production directly from the same platform.
Nice. Nice. It's crazy. I mean, it truly is. It's like a remote development to get your product out the door. This is really cool. This is really cool.
I think this is very cool when you have, if you have a company, that has lots of supplier, lots of teams, and you want to enable fast, or you want the code that the code will only be inside your platform. You don't want developer to download the code, something like that. You can have this to really bootstrap developer teams, supplier, and revoke them if they don't need to access the platform anymore. It's also a way to integrate multi-tenancy level, I think.
Yeah. This is amazing. It's really, and thank you, Natalia. This is walking through this whole thing was great. And it's just an operator. You just like install. Done.
Just an operator. Just an operator. With JJ book, it's going to be much easier to understand those operators and install them. But really, it's operator app, click, install, create the custom resource. From the custom resource, you can also drive and customize your installation. In fact, in this Code Ready Workspace installation, what I did here specifically was to create Code Ready with this storage strategy. So I'm gonna have a per workspace workspaces. So this means that I'm gonna have a persistent volume per workspace. So each user that create a workspace will create a persistent volume. This gives me the maximum multi-tenancy segmentation. So they cannot conflict, they cannot see each other. I can have also a single workspace for everyone. If I have an NFS, I can put 1 terabyte of persistent volume, and they can work all there. Hopefully, an NFS won't crash. But you can have self-signed certificate, key clock, external key clock integration. If you already have any key clock, any Red Hat single sign-on, and you want to integrate it, it's cool also. Think about you have a Windows Active Directory, and you want to integrate, you can do from here or from OpenShift authentication. So it's really open to the administrator to set up the Code Ready Workspaces instance the best is suit the platform and the user you need to serve.
I see in there was a thing for like external plugin registry. Maybe like we would add things that we would want to, like the VI thing that like we as the organization deemed as a plugin that should be available. And instead of everybody having to go and edit the dev file or whatever, maybe that external plugin registry, however that all works, we just point it to that, and then I could be able to like just click on the add button to that workspace instead, right?
Right. Because if you look
cool.
here, there is.
I saw that in the YAML. I was like, that seems neat.
Yeah. And this is to finalize. This is the topology of the Code Ready Workspaces. So you have the front end, you have the single sign-on, you have a database, a Postgres database, you have a plugin registry and dev file registry to store those configuration. And then you have a bunch of workspaces that can be in the same project where you deploy Code Ready Workspaces, or in different projects. If you have multi-tenancy, you can have a user dash workspace project auto-generated. It's up on how you want to configure the Code Ready Workspaces installation.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm sorry. I'm like looking at some stuff on the external registry, looking at documentation for that. Yeah, that looks like that definitely would work. So that's neat.
Nice.
I don't have any information specific to the H availability of the check cluster. So if you want people using it massively, I guess you need some H availability of this tool. So maybe you can just scale up. This is you can scale up the Code Ready Workspace, but it will use the same database then. So you have to care about also on the database part. But maybe you can use a Postgres crunchy operator. So you have H availability on the database side. So you can work on your H available online IDE support for your team, for your organization. And if it is very big, you can think about having multiple Code Ready Workspaces, serving multiple domains, or just putting lots of resources here. You can scale it vertically, horizontally. Horizontally would be the, let's say, the Kubernetes way, until it's possible for a database.
Awesome. This has been super informative, and now I have to play with this. Thanks.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I'm definitely thinking in an upcoming stream we need to play with the multi-tenancy and see just how it shakes out and write something on stream. I think that'd be super cool.
Yeah, there's no reason why we couldn't, right? Like just from soup to nuts, like sit there and be like, okay, I have this OpenShift cluster. I've created this environment or this organization. That's the word I'm looking for. Let's create something, and then, or let's connect it all, show that it actually connects and works. And now let's do our famous, our Python simple Flask app. I mean, it works pretty well, right? So
yeah, that's funny because that's the trick for me is figuring out what exactly we're going to write. Python and Flask, I'm fine with the tech. It's just like, what do we do? It's a cool example.
So Nibs just suggested adding some Chaos Monkey or Gremlin into it also to just play with it a little bit more too, which would be a really, really valid thing. Are we doing this next week? Is that what's going to happen now?
So next week I'm taking off for the long weekend.
There's a long weekend next weekend?
Well, it's Memorial Day weekend next weekend. And
Is it really?
Yeah, dude, thank you. I'm the exact same way.
New Jersey's opening back up. Jay's got to go outside.
Oh God, no. And yeah, so Jersey's like, oh, we're gonna open our beaches because that's like, key to our identity. I'm like, yeah, but our beaches are shitty and you're just gonna kill everyone anyway. No, I have zero desire whatsoever to actually leave the house. But next week's my hell week in terms of other streams and videos and stuff going on. So I had already planned on taking Friday off, and then I realized, oh crap, it's Memorial Day. So y'all are welcome to do it without me, but I would prefer it if you waited for me because that sounds fun as hell.
Yeah, well, we can push it for a week. That's fine. But speaking of, we just passed our hour mark. Old man legs, got to move around. So we'll go ahead and just take a couple minutes here, and we will be back. And by the way, TK Boy 555, stick around just for a couple minutes, and we'll come back after this break, and we will start playing with Tekton. All right.
Yeah, perfect timing of that.
Cool.
Thanks again, Natale.
Thank you.
I believe we're back. Let me make sure the sound's okay. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Hi, everybody. Give me a hi on the chat if you don't mind. I'm sure the stream's coming in. There we go.
I can
Oh,
hear you.
that's just cheating, Jay. That's just cheating. So yeah, thanks again for Natale, for sticking around for that first hour. He's told us he's going to go drink some wine on his
You cut out for me and maybe completely froze.
JJ's gone.
I wanted to hear what that joke was too, because that was probably pretty funny.
I know, and it's never is the same the second time.
I know. So we'll give him a couple seconds, then we'll take over the stream. And yeah, stream worked great. It's JJ that doesn't work great. Clearly his streaming box is still working fine.
Yeah, this seems familiar.
This does seem familiar. So this time we can pull up the Vim Adventures and just run through that on my level 2 that I'm at right now.
Heck yeah, share your screen. Let's go. We're waiting on JJ.
All right, it is. Oh my God, it's definitely back to us.
Yeah, you're the
I'm
host
the host now.
So.
Interesting. He said place where, yeah, something has crashed indeed. I do want to wait for him before we do any content stuff. Let's see. I don't think I'm. I know, it's funny because last week the joke was I should just use this and just completely promote the hell out of my book.
Go for it.
Press any key.
What book are you talking about again?
What book indeed? And I don't have it. Oh, hang on. I just started Vim Adventures and it's playing music. I did have a story I thought I should have told last time. I forget what the hell it actually was. Is he back? Damn it. And he took back host too.
Haha, I'm back. Yeah, I am legit concerned now that it turns out I believe it's the shitty knockoff USB-C hub thing that plugs my MacBook into that has the actual like Ethernet port. I touched it just a second ago and it's super hot. So yeah, I have 2 of them. So I flip back and forth between them, but like last week, right? But now that I have this AC in here, so the room's actually cooler in general. So myself shouldn't do this anymore. But anyway, I need to go buy basically like a real Apple like thing instead of like the knockoff one or something.
The dongle that they have to do that sucks though. I mean, it's like all they have is that little one, right? That's like one USB port, an HDMI port, and a power in. I don't think they have a different one.
Yeah,
granted, there's other ones in like that you could buy.
Yes,
but not Apple.
Yeah, no, it's the one that I got. I got it as actually a gift from a talk sometime. But anyway,
yeah, I had like a small little square one that was from Anchor that worked decently well. Granted, it's not Thunderbolt, but now I have the ThinkPad one that works with the ThinkPad. It's pretty nice. Although that probably would work with a Mac too. It's Thunderbolt 3.
You see docking station.
Yeah.
There's I swear I've seen one of these. Sorry, we're gonna take a quick little detour. So I like using my actual like screen because that's what I have the stream manager on, so I can actually see this going on. And then my main screen is this one that I do all the stuff on. But yeah, so this is like I got the knockoff version of this
Belkin one.
Yeah. Which I'm assuming is overheating. So maybe I do need to buy like an actual like docking station so I put the laptop up off of it so there's even more air underneath it. I don't know.
Babe Cafe said CalDigit T5. I've seen that before, and that's like one of the recommended ones. Kensington, Belkin, those are good. The Anchor one I had worked pretty well too.
Anchor does a lot with batteries, right?
Yeah, they do external batteries, but they used to be, so like Anchor got formed from Google engineers that like decided that the accessory industry is like not, it's like a wild, wild west. Who the hell knows what's going on? And they decided to try to make better products there, and that's why their batteries are really good. But they've started to do, or well, they've been doing it for a little bit, like other accessories.
Oh,
They're cheaper than the CalDigit or the Belkin ones or whatever. But I don't know. It's been fine. The one that I had.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's one.
Yeah, this looks a lot like more than what I've been doing.
It's a big metal box, so it's all a heat sink.
Yeah, that's ooh. Oh, well, if the stream goes out again, maybe I can use an excuse there. Oh no, are we streaming? I got the preview network error.
So.
Yeah,
no,
it looks good to me.
Okay, keep an eye on that for me, please. Like, I don't want to refresh the page, otherwise, things get wonky. Okay, so yes, back to what was it? TX Boy 555. So just before we took our break, by the way, who are you? Let's start there. Jay, who are you?
Who am I? My name is Jason Obies. I'm a developer advocate at Red Hat, focusing on OpenShift.
And who are you?
Hey, I'm Brian Tanis. I am on the same team as Jay, so I'm a developer advocate at Red Hat. And I talk a little bit about OpenShift every now and then.
Awesome. And something called Silverblue that I swear one of these, you know what, maybe next week what we'll do is we'll try to spin up a Silverblue VM, and you can walk me through doing the damn thing, because it's been eating away at me. But anyway, because Jay's not going to
updates should be image-based, signed. It's better security. There's lots of reasons.
There you go.
We'll do it next week.
We'll do it next week.
To answer TK directly, I mean, the answers could go on for easily the rest of the stream, but he asks, or I should say he or she asks, well, the boy part threw me off. Trying to get to the core of what Linux offers to the developer experience that Windows lacks. Probably not what you're expecting to hear, but when you ask that question, it's a very neat, super high level question. My first thought is the terminal and all the built-in tools. So you find developers who are using, what are you laughing at, Brian?
That answer, but because there's Windows WSL that gives you those things now, right?
And maybe it does. So it's been forever since I've worked on a Windows box.
Also Visual Studio, like old school, like real Visual Studio, not Visual Studio Code, but Visual Studio, if you're doing just Windows development, is the end all be all. Like, it has so much that it can do inside that ecosystem, but that's specifically Windows. You have to do a lot of stuff to take that application, that .exe or whatever, and get that to work on Linux. But keep going, Jay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably
that you have a good point.
Yeah, I'm talking at a different level. So you get into, and this may not be the case now. It's been a long, long time since I've done development in Windows. But back in the days when I would, the first thing you do is you try to make it look like a Linux command line. And you get bash on there, you get awk and sed and grep and all of those built-in things that are not there. You're right, though. As I say that, it shows just how damn old I am, because they do have some kind of better shell these days in Windows, right?
So now the WSL Windows subsystem for Linux basically runs all of, like, you go and download the Ubuntu user space, and it's running the actual like executables that you would get in a command line in Ubuntu. You could even do apt install and install things from the official Ubuntu repository and all of that stuff. You could, I mean, I guess, yeah, there's Fedora as well, talking more Red Hat stuff, but you could do that. And if you're more familiar with DNF, you could do that. And it's just basically the terminal that is taking the same bit for bit executables And instead of using the Linux kernel, there's like a translation layer that they've like put a lot of effort into, that basically most things I think probably work now. Whenever I tried it maybe like 3 years ago or something, like stuff like ping and like nmap were really weird, but like those are like really hard network things. They're probably solved now though.
I
So,
would say though,
I'm
it's
going
not
to
everyone.
Oh, that the ESRB rating on this is hilarious.
Yeah,
That's
priorities.
literally,
right?
they're
ESRB
all-
is literally a video game construct. The fact that they're
Well,
rating
this is
Fedora cracks
like
me up.
in the Windows Store. And
Sure.
the Windows Store has
Mhm.
those
Games and stuff.
ratings for everything in the Windows Store. So this is something that like also has to have
Alex
that to be a
Bettine, at
part of the
least.
store.
That's really
Yeah.
funny, Niv. All right, so
But,
I'm going to
like-
slightly change my answer and then add a new one. But my slight change is fine. You get access to all the tools without doing these extra stupid, unnecessary steps that you shouldn't need. Like if you're going to install Windows just to install Ubuntu on it, cut out the middleman and just install Ubuntu.
True.
I'm going to go with the second one then. This is another thing personal for me. The fact that I can customize the living hell out of my desktop environment. So GNOME 3 versus KDE versus XFCE versus i3 versus whatever the hell Brian's using, because I'm sure it's something weird. Being able to
No, I
pick
just
that.
use GNOME nowadays.
Okay. Being able to pick that. And you know, it's funny because GNOME 3 falls under exactly what I was just saying. It's like, hey, I can use GNOME 3 ... once I modify the hell out of it with extensions to make it usable, but I can do it. So I have, I use 12 virtual workspaces, and I actually have 2 monitors, so it's almost effectively 24 because I don't minimize things. My workflow is to treat everything as a giant canvas and then know, relatively speaking, where things are, and then just Control Alt and arrows, because again, back to earlier today, I use the arrows a lot, hop around where I need. And being able to customize all that. And I ripped out the default GNOME bar and I replaced it with Polybar that I've modified, and being able to modify the key bindings, like that amount of customization, which again means if I go onto a standard issue box, I'm a little like, okay. Like, you know, you get onto like my Raspberry Pi doesn't have LL alias by default. Obviously super simple to fix, but out of the box, that's not a bash alias. So you do the hit like ... crap. All right, hang on, let me set up where I want. But for me, that's honestly bigger than even like the tools in the command line, is being able to make the window manager work best for me and be able to kind of tweak it around, which again is not entirely what he's asking. I'm sure he's asking from a much more technical level and actual benefit level. But for me, for my developer inner loop and setting things up and being able to quickly and easily get what's in my head translated out, I need that level of customization. I tried Mac for a couple of years and it was just too, no, you're going to do it our way. And that's it. And I don't, their ways just never completely clicked with me. No matter how much I'm like, all right, maybe I should learn a standard instead of tweaking everything to all hell. But it just has not really clicked with me. So being able to work with any of that stuff is huge for me.
Well, I'll just say that WebEx is what killed me on a Linux. I was forced to use WebEx, and I was just like, I can't do this. Like, there's too many problems with this thing. So I actually went back to a Mac because of WebEx.
I mean, yeah. So before I worked at Red Hat, I worked at Citrix, and we used GoToMeeting, or we owned GoToMeeting, and it was the same thing. Like, there wasn't a way to run GoToMeeting in a web browser. That's solved now. But before there wasn't, and there wasn't a Linux executable. So I literally had to have a Windows VM just for meetings, and that was a pain in the butt. But the reason why I did it was because me working on Linux was faster for me, because like I'm used to that workflow and I've learned it and I could move around and do things faster. The other big thing that was really beneficial that I think like I really love this aspects of Linux is the ability to have like DNF or Yum or apt, right? I have a repository available there that probably 95% of the time has all of the software I could ever think of And I could just basically say DNF install. Well, granted, I'm on Silverblue, RPM-OS tree install, whatever app I want, and it will install it. And not just install, will make sure that it's up to date. So I get security patches and stuff like that. Like Windows has some of that stuff kind of like solved with maybe Chocolatey if you're using that, but like you
Chocolatey's
have
solid.
to add something.
Yeah, Nougat and Chocolatey is solid. But I want to interrupt.
It is.
And I want to point you to the question that TD555 is just asked.
About
I heard
the
that.
compatibility.
Yeah, I have a
Yeah.
feeling Brian has some opinions there.
Let me jump in real quick before Brian comes with a more technical answer. And this actually will just nib to the fact that I said to install Ubuntu. I actually tried Ubuntu for about 8 months or so last year. I had been on Fedora for a while, and then I was like, I hadn't kept it updated, so I tried Ubuntu. Moved back to Fedora. I forget exactly why. I think it had to do with Code Ready Containers compatibility. So I'm on Fedora 31 right now, and what has absolutely floored me, and this is to answer TKD's question. In the past couple of months, I've bought my Logitech webcam that I'm pointing at. I got this new Blue Yeti microphone. I have Logitech gaming headset that I usually use on my gaming rig behind me, which is Windows because gaming. That'll pull over here. Every single one of those I plugged in and it instantly found. And it absolutely floored the hell out of me. Found it by name. And I can go in my drop down right now and say, which one of those do I want to listen to? And it's not like USB device 3 or something like that. It literally says Logitech, blah, blah, blah.
Do you want to show us? Do you want to prove it? Prove it to us?
I will.
I don't believe you.
Prove it to you.
I don't believe you, Jay.
In a heartbeat.
Hang on.
Drop your share. I'm taking. There we go.
It's there, but that's like one of the big advantages, right? So with Linux, you have the kernel that has supportability for all these peripherals, and I don't even have to think about drivers. I don't have to go to NVIDIA's website, download that stuff, install it, think about all of that, right? My video card just works. If I plug in a USB device, like a scanner or something, you know, like whatever, but if I plug that in, it's just gonna work, to your point. Like if I get a new microphone or something, I don't have to go and download the driver, install it, because it's part of the kernel that's already there. So
Now,
driver hell is not a problem in Linux. It might have used to been years ago when you might have to configure your wireless card and configure all this crap. But all those things have been solved now. So those aren't problems anymore. Those are problems you've probably heard of before.
It 100% used to be a problem, even as recent as like 5+ years ago. But I remember back in the early 2000s setting up Myth TV Box. If either of you guys have ever heard of that. Right. Okay,
Nice.
awesome.
Heck yeah. I had a
and
TV
that was
tuner and everything, man. It could cut out DVR, it could cut out the commercials. It was great.
The auto detect in the commercials for early 2000 was bonkers, that it would just flip and then keep going. And then that thing was a nightmare and a half. I was still new to Linux, but you were compiling drivers and you were finding them from all over. I don't even know if it's still a project, but like, I mean, TV tuners aren't really a thing either anymore.
I think it went to XBMC and now it's Kodi or something.
Well,
so like
XBMC,
it's changed a couple times.
XBMC actually forked into Plex TV, which became a company, and then Kodi TV took it. No, it's all the same code base. Now that could be a stream inside of itself, was going through that whole history. Because trust me, I know this history very well.
This is why I love this stream, because I mentioned this obscure reference to Myth TV, and you guys know the history since then.
Heck yeah, man! I remember setting all that stuff up. I didn't want to buy a DVR from AT&T that like caused my living room to be like 100 degrees.
Yeah. And then I had like a little wireless keyboard with like a thumbstick mouse on it, but I also had like the remote thing going. And then I could connect to it from home. So I had the web interface to it shared on a port. So I'm not from home, from work. So I would be like, oh, what's going to be recorded tonight? And it was so badass at the time. And like probably my first real experiment into Linux. We're getting like super historical about it. And that was about the time where I started using it on my work desktop and learning things. So for JJ on his call out here, you can see that it's got the 2 listings for my headset. And that's because there are 2 specific modes where I can flip between. Digital output, that's my motherboard one. Line out, that's also my motherboard one, and that's connected to some speakers. And then The digital output on the Yeti, I'm not 100% sure what that is. There might be another slot under here I'm missing, but speakers on the Yeti microphone. So this cable in these headset is plugged into the Yeti so I can hear back. I can set it up differently where it'll come out of my speakers and then I can talk into the mic. I haven't tried it because I'm assuming there's going to be some kind of weirdness with the sound getting picked up. And then the microphone, it's going to pick up my webcam. So there's apparently one on my webcam, which kind of scares me. My gaming headset, because it's got like the pull down microphone, and then the Yeti stuff. And like, I'm not trying to say, this floored me. I did not expect it to go this smoothly. I expected all of these to show up as generic devices and hopefully work. But my webcam, before I got the little flip down cover, I unplugged it from the front of my box just out of distrust. And one time I started, I think it was a Blue Jeans session or Zoom or something like that, and I didn't have it plugged in. So I plugged it in and Blue Jeans immediately picked it up and let me turn it on. And I was like, I didn't have to restart Blue Jeans. And like, that sounds like it should be basic functionality. The fact that TKD is asking this question shows that he's at least heard that you don't really get that on Linux typically. But every single one of these pieces, my printer is the same thing where I had it scan the network and it found my Wi-Fi printer and added that. And I've been, and I'm sure there's some, you know, this is all fairly popular tech, like the Blue Yetis are a pretty common podcasting mic. Logitech is pretty big in the industry. And I guess at this point they've invested in current development, but I'm absolutely floored. Like, I'm legit surprised that this stuff registered as simply as it did and worked as seamlessly as it does. Cause I'm all the time flipping between the, oops, I put that away though. My microphone, or do I have it coming out of this mic or my actual loudspeakers or something like that? Yeah, so I proved it. And then on top of that, this whole, the way GNOME does all of this stuff is also bonkers in and of its own right. The headset has a volume wheel on it that will work to set, when I have it plugged in, to set the system volume.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I've been super, super surprised. And it's possible this stuff worked in Ubuntu also. Honestly, I suspect, I would have expected it to work there before Fedora, but I have been blown away at how well Fedora 31 has, or how far along it's come. Because I started out in Fedora on like 17-ish, and it was super manual for any of this kind of stuff.
GNOME's turning into that tweakable Mac, it just works type thing. You don't have to think about getting things working, but you could tweak it and make it look and act the way that you want it to. And that's how I think of it now.
Yeah,
Stuff
the best
works.
of both worlds. But you can't see, for some reason, on top my polybar, but I fully customized my top menu into like just the stats that I want to see and like the shortcuts I want and things like that. I don't know why it's come through as weird as it is, but in any case.
So 555, the troll answer to your question is you should use Linux from scratch. But no, don't do that. Honestly, to Jay's point, Fedora is solid. Like the newest version of Fedora has an insane amount of support for so many different things. That's actually that laptop, if you can see me pointing by the radios, that's my Fedora box. And it is, everything works on it exactly how I want it to. And I use it for all my IBM stuff.
I got a ThinkPad recently from work and I put Fedora on it, and surprisingly the sleep actually functions correctly where I can close it and open it. And that was a huge turnaround. I mean, and again, I know Nib was joking around about the Red Hat guy saying to install Ubuntu, but if you had talked about a year ago at this time and you were new to it, I would have said start with Ubuntu, because it's friendlier in the sense that they make it slightly easier to install the non-free stuff like MP3 support and things like that. But I have not had a problem on this Fedora box. I've been kind of floored at how smooth everything went.
So
and that's not like we get absolutely nothing at Red Hat from pushing Fedora. So you can't even, I don't even feel the need to do this disclaimer. I'm like, but it's coming from the Red Hat guy. Like I'm as distant from Fedora as I am Ubuntu these days with what I work on.
The reason why I mentioned Ubuntu is because like what I even mentioned that like when I tried it was years ago, like Ubuntu was the only option that was available there, and it just like it's like slipped past my mind that there's other options now as a part of like the Windows Store to download that stuff. So Fedora's in there now, but I just like thought that Ubuntu was the only thing. But then the other big reason I think that like I use this, other than like I'm more productive and I know I'm more productive in it, is I'm working with Kubernetes, I'm working with OpenShift, I'm working cloud natively, right? And what
Mhm.
we're doing there is spinning up containers that are Linux based. They're Linux containers. They have the same tooling, the same type of stuff there, right? So me as a developer working on the cluster, I'm a lot closer to what's actually running in my like container orchestrator, all these things, right? I'm closer to that, and I, am learning, and I could understand what's going on, and I know that I need to go here to look at logs. I need to go here to go here, and look at these things. And those are valuable points of why I also run Linux instead
And
of Ubuntu.
I've got to say, I finally have a chance to use this. We won't actually see it, but I did the Obama animated GIF of the mic drop on the stream.
Right. Oh, nice. I see it. Now you just need to figure out how to get that on the Zoom call too.
There you go. I'll get there eventually. So last question. Oh, Jay, you already got it. Awesome.
Yeah, it's a cop-out answer, but honestly, Babe, yeah, other people are going to have their references. I don't know a single one, but given how, again, so I've been working with Linux since around 2003-ish, and it's staggering in 17 years how far things have come from Myth TV and finding these really obscure forums talking about compiling drivers to today, when we're in this world that I'm literally streaming right now, not only on a Linux box, but on Twitch about Linuxy type stuff. So the resources are out there to find someone who's reasonably personal and entertaining on YouTube, who's going to be talking about the basic stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, what's his name? Linus Tech Tips. Like if you were starting from absolute ground zero, he's actually pretty good. Like he keeps you interested in what's going on. If you really embrace it and embrace the open source culture and the Linux culture in general, and culture, if you will, you'll quickly move past him. Right, like your curiosity will take over. And again, Babe Cafe is right. Linux from scratch is actually a really good way to learn how to build Linux from absolutely nothing. But there's a ton of work that needs to happen before you can get there. I mean, that book is 800 pages long, and you sit there wondering why X won't compile. But when I did it, it took me a weekend, literally from Friday night. I started the compile. It was compiling all the way until Monday morning, just compiling X. But now we can run it and on just a VM, like on a VirtualBox machine, and it takes a couple hours, right? And that's a VM on a laptop inside your house compared to what it was like. So it's made leaps and bounds since then. So your iterations are much quicker. Anyway, so the whole reason why we're here, let's take it back. We're going to play with some Tekton today in the OpenShift ecosystem. So we tried to use this last week, and we had some stumbling blocks. I admit it. I did not have the vernacular to understand all the different portions of the Tekton ecosystem. So I think it might be worth us taking a moment and talking about the concepts of Tekton. So when we bring it up again inside of OpenShift, we can actually spend some time speaking the same language. So I literally read this yesterday. I literally just got my head wrapped around this yesterday, and I hope you all just jump in to talk about this at the same rate. But I at least have some commonality now to make things make sense. So first thing first, Inside of Tekton, everything is built with a pipeline. A pipeline is the way that the Tekton runs, right? It's the actual, it ties everything together. And there are two different types of things, and we'll get to that in just a second. There are triggers, which actually takes either like a cron job or a webhook. If you push something up to GitHub or whatever, it'll do that. You can actually kick it off using the CLI if you need to be like, hey, Tekton, go do your thing, to run that. And then you have a dashboard, which wait, what's that? Is there a light side and a dark side? Sorry, I'm not missing the joke. There's a dashboard so you can actually see what's going on inside of Tekton, which is nice. So this graph, right, or this diagram actually makes things make so much more sense. I did not have this reference when we were playing with it last week, and now it does, which is a pipeline is a collection of tasks, and inside of a task, you have steps. So a step could be running a build command, or running some type of script or something like that, where a task is a collection of them, which you would want to put in as like, do local work for Docker or whatever, like do the Docker build command and tag it. Sure, let's just go with that. And that would be a task. And then your next task of task B would be like push to Docker Hub, or in this case, Quay, because we should be using Quay, right? Is that nothing? Didn't even get a smile. Didn't even get a smile.
Yay, Red Hat products.
Yay, there we go. There we go.
Hey, Quay just had a release too. It's updated now. It's like 3.3 or something like that. So there you go.
You know, I didn't react to it crazy. For a while, I was still kind of hell-bent on Docker Hub, but I'm getting more comfortable with Quay. And part of it comes down to, I just was never overly comfortable with the Docker style of how they handle images and tagging them, tagged it with the repo name. It just always felt unnatural to me. So I gravitated toward Docker Hub for a while and haven't really been in this whole pro use Quay for everything kick.
I just keep forgetting to use
security
Quay.io.
scanning.
Yeah. And that's what it comes down to. It just feels dumb to me to have that repo information as part of the tag.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, it doesn't, you're right. Because we all defaulted. Anyway, that's a different conversation. Let's keep going. I actually want to get quick Tekton working, damn it. So then the pipeline ties it all together. Now, there's a very important concept that I did not get until very late yesterday. And there's something called pipeline and pipeline resources. A pipeline is a generic description of something. So let's take that Docker instance again, right? Where we have a bunch of tasks that do Docker build, Docker push, that's our pipeline. You make it generic and you create a pipeline resource that can put in as basically variables, if you will, for dev or QA or prod. So you can actually tell it to go to different locations. So you standardize your pipeline to be generic of these are the tasks and steps I've got to do. Then you use a pipeline resource to change out like the version number, or we're pushing this into the QA environment or whatever. And that's a very core concept of Tekton, where you have a genericized, if that's a word, something, and then you have a resource that gives it specificality, if that's another word. That was really, really, really a hard concept for me not to, like, it doesn't explicitly say that. And for me, now that I understand those two portions, that's the reason why you see everything kind of doubled up. And it seemed kind of weird, but as you build out your pipelines to multiple different things going on, because you're not just always just going to use Docker, you could be doing your PY tests or whatever, right? Like you could be using RSpec to run unit tests and things like that. You need this, you need to genericize them so everybody can use them, and then they can take that and repeatability, so they don't waste their time building that pipeline anymore. They can just use your thing with your variables. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. It's a configuration. I like to think of it as like you putting something into the pipeline and it works on that. And then the other object to know about is the run. The pipeline run is the results of shoving resources through a pipeline, and it creates task runs and pipeline runs, which are the executions of those.
And this picture right here to tell us that, where a pipeline run, as you can see, has a schedule of different times, and it will run the pipeline run. So you have the pipeline resource, and then you have the pipeline run that actually does the thing. So it's modularization
You got it.
to be able to be able to actually do it, which is super powerful when you start breaking it up into that. It's no longer the Jenkins build step, right? Where you're just like run the right? Like how many times have you taken a Jenkins file, copy pasta the whole thing, and changed one variable inside of there, right? Like you know for a fact you've done that. I have a couple Jenkins files just sitting in a Git repo that I'm like, oh, I need to do this, copy, right? So anyway, not that I'm very passionate about this. I'm just so happy I finally understand this.
No, it's fair, because like if you just poke around the UI, it's funny because once you have it explained, you're like, oh shit, that makes complete sense. Until you do, that UI and that whole interaction is spectacularly obtuse. And like, I still need to kind of re-up on like our Katacoda scenarios or something to remind me of the flow and everything like that. You know, you're in the UI's got a neat way of building it with some bizarre complications, but the visualization it does is really, really cool.
Yep. So what we did last week is we used the OpenShift pipelines operator. We literally just clicked install, and we got the OpenShift pipelines which is Tekton, installed, and it was great. We were able to start talking to some things. I believe it was, where was it? Here we go. This is all our broken shit. So we are not going to talk about that anymore.
We're going to do the true engineer thing and just throw it away and do it again.
Yeah. I think that's the best way. So should we just go ahead and uninstall the operator? Is that the best way to get rid of it all?
No, that's all good.
No,
like the operator,
just throw the pipeline itself away.
So like under projects, we would just create a new project, right?
For real.
Or we could just go and delete the pipeline resources under the project that we had.
I'm with Brian on that project, because we talked about this a few weeks ago on the stream that, you know, projects are my way of the kind of nuclear option to be like, nope, don't feel like figuring out what went wrong. We're going to do it again.
Yep.
Right. I think that we were close. I don't know what the problem that we had was, but I do think that we were relatively close.
I do want to point out that they do have an interactive tutorial here on the actual Tekton dev site using Katacoda. So if you have not had a chance to
we have one for OpenShift. Go to learn.openshift.com.
Actually, I'll put that link in.
Yeah, perfect. I will say this is what I was playing with yesterday, and the actual code, which really could use some updating. This is all the actual, and also it's under like some homeboys, Brandon Walker. I don't know who this is. It's an IBMer, but it's really weird to have this under like his namespace. Feels kind of weird. This is the actual steps you walk through, but the interesting part was that it was really just like install Tekton and then do thing, thank you, goodbye.
Step 2, step 3, profit.
Pretty much.
Pretty
much. It was but I will admit though, I think it was in step 2, he actually brings you up into the dashboard to play around with the stuff, which I thought was kind of cool. And then he has some really useful like apps so you can actually see things work. We ended up getting lost on the secrets to Docker Hub, which was actually a really big step that we had to deal with. So I don't know. Long story short, it's worth taking a look. But also the learn.openshift.com is probably much better outputted, and it's, you know, it's not random homeboy Brandon Walker doing this. So
that one of the people on our team, he made the scenario, and it goes through walking through kind of explaining basically what you showed on the stream, you know, like this is what a pipeline is, and this is like the collection of all the different pieces, and then you have the run, or the resource component that gives the variables, that does all of that stuff. And it's the same type of thing, right? You go and click the scenario and it launches in the browser. You don't have to have an OpenShift to begin with. It gives you one. Yeah.
Excellent.
It is excellent. I like that.
See, I'm getting the timing. I'm getting
Yes.
the timing better. I'm getting the timing better. By the way, Brian, I just while I'm thinking about it, so I have a NAS down there, right there, and it's in a FreeBSD box running ZFS. If Silverblue can use ZFS and can read ZFS, then there's a chance that I might be putting my life's work in your hands to help me get.
I used to. The thing that says ZFS is a very free BSD or BSD type thing. ZFS on Linux has made a lot of progress.
Yeah.
And I think it's better now, but I used to not run. It wasn't Fedora. It was the CentOS machine. It was the same thing, probably similar to what you got going on with ZFS on Linux. And I did have some kind of weirdness sometimes whenever ZFS on Linux didn't update their kernel module, in a couple days from the time that the kernel got released or whatever. But the one on Fedora should be okay because it uses Kmod or whatever it is. It builds on the fly whenever you're updating a kernel. So it should be okay.
Okay. So yeah, back to the stream next week. We're going to just be playing with Silverblue. That has been decided. and then Jay, we'll play with the Code Ready Workspaces the week after that. But
awesome.
I'm actually inch. Anyway, okay, sorry. Back to what we're actually
doing. Pull in an expert or something, and we could talk to that guy too. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, why not? Why not? Okay, so let us first build our first task, right? Which is, by the way, UBI. That stands for
Universal Base Image. It is basically a rel image that does not have the licensing headaches that a rel image has.
Why? How's that different than CentOS?
Did I
step on a landmine? I stepped on a landmine, didn't I?
Yeah, I mean it's yeah.
UBI supported, CentOS isn't supported.
That's a good way of doing it.
Okay, all right. That's valid.
And UBI, you could ship that rel-based image in your app. The EULA for the UBI allows that. CentOS would probably allow that too, right? But if you have a problem with it or something, that image, well, you're not coming to Red Hat for support. You're going to the community for support. Where if you're using the UBI image, you're coming to Red Hat for support. I think that's probably the biggest difference and reason.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that.
All right. So
I've been to a few conferences where I've gotten, I got CentOS.
Well,
cool.
I was at a company that we refused to pay for the rel license, and we used CentOS 6, and it bit us in the butt many, many, many times.
This is exactly why we allow CentOS to exist, because people do the exact. They're like, "Oh, I can do this myself. Oh shit, not a good idea. Not a good idea."
It works until you ask Red Hat for help.
Yeah.
And sorry, but that's the reason why Red Hat exists, is the supportability part.
When you have to deal with document discovery from Sarbanes-Oxley, and you're like, oh, CentOS just decided to shit the bed. Sorry. Yeah, it's a real hard conversation to have with lawyers.
Yeah, it is.
It's a real hard conversation. Okay, so this right here is a simple task where we build a CentOS image, and we just run hello world against it, and then we delete it, and then we remove the image. So I would imagine a simple task we can build is just Docker build. Am I correct on this? Is that the right first thing to do?
I would guess so, yeah. I'm caught up on the Docker part. I'm wondering if we just have a Podman based task.
We can do, sure, that's fine. I basically have this. What I want to do is I want to pull down this. I'm bringing in COBOL again. I just want to pull down my repo and then just have it compile, do the Docker build, right, or Podman build, whatever, and then run.
It's JJ
Dang
by
it.
again. I think that, I mean, with OpenShift pipeline, he's not here, but with that, like, wouldn't we use Builda? Isn't that a part of
This
pipelines?
builder versus pod. I mean, it's yes, but if we're doing it natively, if we're doing something where we're supporting someone's existing infrastructure, or we're doing a direct port to prove people the value, we've got to be able to speak to this
Copy,
example of a Docker build to it. So that part doesn't particularly surprise me. I just wonder if, like, I mean, I see where he's going with
Am I
this.
here? Am I here?
There we go.
Hey,
That was the
sorry about that.
fastest save ever.
Oh,
Getting
jeez.
faster at this. You don't have an excuse to buy that thing.
It's at the rate I'm going here. So,
So yeah, I think I see what you're getting at here. Start with the base image and then just do a command in there and have that command be a checkout and build from source. I wonder if we could just reuse an existing task in that catalog we looked at that will do this for us, and then we don't have to actually define the task.
Tekton catalog.
Catalog, yeah.
So with Shari, yes, Podman, Docker would, how would you communicate to the Docker socket? So it's a good question. We run container D underneath our Kubernetes instance on IKS. I have no idea what our OpenShift version is. We would probably have to spend some time figuring that out.
No, he's got a point though, because in the UBI, we'd have to install Docker, start up the Docker daemon, assuming Docker still runs on the UBI, which probably does. And what did we stop support at? 1.13, I think.
Yeah, this is, I'm not sure. As far as what? Supportability for Docker?
Red Hat
and
support for Red Hat. Yeah.
Or no,
No, because remember, none
Kubernetes.
of this is talking about kube. This is all what's going to run in the container in that one task step.
Yeah.
So none of this matters what's running on the underlying cluster, because this stuff solely exists in that container for the purposes of running the task. And yeah, so those points, OCP4 does run on Cryo. I mean, getting back to Fedora, as of 31, Docker doesn't even run on it because of the way C groups are handled. So I've been just using Podman for stuff.
I actually wrote a blog post on how to fix that because I didn't know what the hell was going on. So I figured out how to get around it.
Just I didn't want to muck with my installation to that level.
Yeah, no, I got pissed. I was actually like, why the hell is this not working? And I ended up having to read a bunch of things, and they were like, just do this. So I put a blog post together because I was annoyed about it. Anyway, so this is our catalog. We are going to use
Builda.
Builda.
Yeah, it's gonna be Builda.
All right, what the hell is Builda?
Brian, you take this one. I know the terms Builda,
I mean,
Cryo, and Podman.
So what does Docker do? Docker runs a service on your machine that handles a lot of things. It handles the ability to talk to registries. It handles the ability to build container images. It handles the ability to run container images. And there's always a daemon that's running that's there. So the community decided, hey, like, you know, this is a lot of things that are going on here. Let's break this up and make it so that, hey, if I'm running a Kubernetes cluster, I don't need all of those things, right? All I really need is the ability to run a container. So that's what CRI-O, Cryo, like handles for us. And then, well, you know, you also need to build containers, and, you know, there needs to be ability to do that as well. Well, that's what Builda is for. But like me as a developer using Fedora, I need the ability to do all of the stuff that like I'm familiar with in Docker, right? So Podman is a thing, and Podman basically ties a lot of these things together and gives me a Docker compliant command line tool that allows me to run containers, build containers, talk to registries, right? There's also Scopio, which handles the talking to registries and things like that. You can move a container image from one registry to another registry without touching your machine, right? It doesn't it works that way. It's kind of neat. So I don't have to pull locally, then put, that I don't have to do that. Scopio handles that. So those tools do specific tasks. And I don't know which version of Kubernetes is like, this was, officially adopted. Cryro is the official runtime in later versions of Kubernetes. It happened at KubeCon last year. The middle of the year, to give you a general idea. OpenShift 4 also Cryro based, right? If you want to use Docker as your daemon to run containers, you could do that. You could switch it out and use Docker if that's what you want to do underlying, right? But those are things that are there. One of the other big advantages is with Docker, you're getting containers that are running as root, right? Like that's a thing. With Podman, the rootless containers, rootless builds, those are things that are available that are by default, by design, to give you better security, things like that, right? So that's kind of why those things exist. That's why and what they're used for. But those are the tools that are available.
Nice. Okay. So we want to use build to build the Docker file that I have that does all the stuff for us.
JJ,
Correct?
take a look at chat, pull that up. This comes out of our Katacoda scenario, and this is a task that does something very similar that we can use as a reference point.
Okay.
So it's Node.js based, source to image based. That's going to do everything from, it's got the build command in there, and then it's actually going to push to. Question.
So wait, hold on. Pause. Hold on. This is just one big task
with multiple steps.
With multiple steps. Would we want this as? Is this just like, is this a time that we just want one? Like, so somebody was saying a task is done inside of a pod where steps are done inside of containers. So is that what we want in this case? Right?
It could make sense. I think especially in this case, given that if you look at the images we're building off of, it's S2I, it's I guess just like a general builder. But seeing as with the pod, they're going to share the volumes. We see the volume mounts of gen source.
And they're doing empty dirs, so they need to share the stuff back and forth.
Yep. Right. So this is how those individual little steps are going to piece together for the overall task. There's probably best practices of how to divide this. And the reason I only say probably is because they may just not exist yet if this stuff is new enough that people don't have just enough time to be like, okay, this is how it's going to, sorry, I was reading chat at the same time. We don't really have enough examples, I don't think yet, to say this is the best practice for how you divide these things up.
Okay.
But again, this comes from our Katacoda scenario. I'm not sure if this was because it's simpler to do in one task, but the idea of, if you have multiple steps in a task and multiple tasks in a pipeline, then you get into designy types of questions. So to answer the chat question, this is basically a replacement for Jenkins, where it is natively built into the cluster and taking advantage of more cluster type constructs than Jenkins, which is more of the old school initial way Jenkins was defined. So you can hear, and some of that answer came in what we were just talking about, how each task has a pod, each step has its own container, and you have all these tiny little bits and pieces you can assemble together using that infrastructure of standing up pods, standing up containers on them, and then have all of that run directly in the cluster using the cluster resources, as compared to Jenkins, which is a CI/CD system dropped into a container.
100% agree. That being said, if you guys are using Jenkins X, or like maybe you're using GitHub Action, or using whatever, and you're already tying these things in, right? Like those tools are still supported and they're still fine. They're still okay to use. But to give you the idea, like this is a more cloud native is the way to like capture all of that way to tie this stuff together.
Okay, so now that we actually have the code in front of us.
Yeah, now part of this is definitely gonna have to change because this is using an S2I base for Node.js.
Yes.
So you'll see some of the stuff in here. This S2I command, for instance. So let me see, I'm not sure where you are in the, if you go down under steps and go down, yeah, that'll work. So generate, name generate, that's easy enough. Image is going to be the image that gets created into the container for the step. Not 100% sure of what S2I means. I suspect it means it's an image with at least the S2I tool installed, perhaps a few other supplementary things. Because
Would this be a time that we should Docker pull this image down and see what's going on?
we could, let's pause on that for a second.
Okay.
Because I'm still kind of breaking this out in my head too. Command is going to be running that S2I command. So kind of further doubles down on the idea that this image has at very least S2I installed already on it. That what you're highlighting right now is the Node.js base S2I image. So this task is phrased and written in such a way to say it's doing a Node.js S2I build. S2I, in case we haven't explained this in chat yet, I forget if we covered it. Source to image. It's a way of telling this base container, hey, use this Git repository. I'm telling you it's a Node.js Git repository, build it for me. And it'll follow the conventions to expect in NPM and things like that and actually assemble my image. So it takes care of even writing the Docker file straight up for me, has some stuff bundled into it. So effectively we're saying we're going to pass a Git repository into this and it's going to produce an image that will run a Node.js application for us. Now that part with the registry.access, that's the Node.js base image. So nothing in this task and nothing in that image from 2 lines up is Node.js specific until we get here. So if we start gutting this, we can gut it starting here and not use S2I, use some kind of other base container image here that we're going to know has, if you want to use Docker on it, we can use Docker on it. But here's where we start munging in some of those things. So the first thing we're missing from your Jenkins piece is an image that will have Docker on it that can run.
See, I mean, there's dind, but so like with dind, I know like you're not going to be able to run like a full-blown container in a container. You're not going to be able to run like nested containers in OpenShift. Maybe if you like give it privileged and root access and all those things, but so that's one weirdness. I don't know. Maybe a Docker build would work in a dind kind of container if we wanted to do that.
Now, if we go back to that file we were just looking at, and Brian, here's where I'm getting super confused. So hopefully you can make more sense of this than I can.
This is saying
that's a generate
to
do some sort of generation step, but the next one is build, which actually calls into a builder image and presumably does the actual building. This looks redundant if I was looking at this out of context.
There's this, what we played with yesterday was Kennyco. Have you heard of this?
No, but conceptually I see where it's going with this.
Yeah. And it looked like it actually worked. I know nothing about this thing though.
Well, it's your cluster, not mine, so I don't care if we run random stuff. We can do some curl bashes while we're at it.
I mean, hey, I live and breathe that now.
Kennyco from Google is like build it. Interesting. Very
So
interesting.
maybe hold on, maybe in this step, what he's doing in the config for the generate piece is generating the Docker file using S2I only. And then he's building the container using buildit. I think that makes sense in my
That
head.
does make sense, and based on what you're this last command, this as Docker file and the dockerfile.gen,
Yeah.
I think you're right. Okay, so let's take a step back and let me try to re-explain what I incorrectly explained. 3 steps in this task. First step, this generate is purely creating the Docker file for us. So the
Which
S2I explanation
you probably
I
already
gave,
have.
which you probably already have. So the short
Correct.
version is this gets trashed entirely.
Okay.
Because like in this, it's saying, hey, here's the inputs of the base image for that Docker file, which he wants to use a Node.js base image as the, in the Docker file that's getting generated. I think that makes sense.
And that is really cool. That's actually a neat setup to this. Kind of unnecessary, but I see why in the Katacoda scenario, we would have a generate and a build, try to force a generate and a build step.
All I care about as a developer, I don't care about this container shit. I just care about my code, right?
Yep.
Yeah. If someone else is going to make my Docker file for me, I'm all happy with that. But I guess where it becomes weird is that S2I could have just done both steps at once for us. This feels a little, again, example purposes. I mean, it's a lot. So.
Probably a reason that it was done this way, but.
What's that?
Don't know.
Oh, yeah.
I said there was probably a reason why it was done like this, but yeah.
I think, again, for demo purposes. So if you look about 18 characters to the right, that gen source dockerfile.gen, that came out of that previous step that we deleted. So the gen source is the shared volume because we're working the same pod. The dockerfile.gen was the result of that S2I command that we deleted. And again, I'm saying we deleted it because you have your Docker file in that you're using in Jenkins. So a lot of this is going to stay similar. We just need a way of getting your Docker file in here. So I wonder if step 1 is a Git-based step that checks out the code to a specific directory.
Well, he has, so go up a little. There's inputs, and the input is source type Git. So there is already an input set up somehow.
Yeah, I see. And then it was probably using that generate step. I'm looking now. Because you're right, there is a Git input that should handle a lot of the mechanics, but I'm not quite sure when it does the actual checkout.
So, I mean, with just specifying type Git, as the source, like I'm sure it may be in the pipeline or the task resources or pipeline resources.
It'll give you the option. Yeah, it'll give you like a little bar to be like, this is where to check it out from.
But there's like there's a variable in here, path context, which is the location. Maybe that's where that's going to dump it into.
Maybe another option, if you scroll down, there's /workspace-source. I wonder if that's a convention thing. Workspace/source, I'm sorry. Wait a minute, why is mine like different than yours?
I don't know, workspace.
Yeah, working directory. Oh, that was in the one we deleted. Okay. That might have been that might have been where the source came. No, because we still need the source directory. Never mind me.
Okay. So is there a back to this guy? No, where is it? Catalog. Is there a Git checkout? Git clone.
So yeah, I guess you could do that. But okay, so What's the difference between that and then the inputs is specifying as a Git?
Yeah, so I'm reading it now. The Git resource represents a Git repository that contains the source code to be built by the pipeline. Adding the Git resource as an input to a task will clone this repository and allow the task to perform the required action on the contents of the repo. What it's not telling me is where the hell it's actually going to put it.
Can't you
Unless-
declare that in the
No.
working directory?
Presumably it's just whatever the working directory is, but I'm not seeing any options that say like, this is where it's going to shove it.
I'd imagine
Just
it
like
would-
by
I mean,
default, it'll. Well, he specified like a path context, right? But is that?
Yeah,
let's
that's what's
see.
intriguing for where to run S2I from, but I'm wondering why.
Let's look at the docs for tasks and see what inputs are.
It's funny, this all made sense when I was clicking through Katacoda and just like having it populate stuff for me. I suppose I didn't put enough thought into what was happening.
Yeah, right.
I imagine we're going to need all of these at some point. That's why I'm putting them there, right? Because we're going to need an image, we're going to need a working directory, and then we're going to need the same volume mounts to be able to get the build to actually do the work, right?
Yeah, I'm still not convinced we're going to need a step for this though, because it does sound like having an import
Yeah.
type, a task resource type, a task resource of type Git is going to do that for us.
I appreciate that main support. That's pretty good. Well, look at what we have there: containers, COBOL, and some serious development. You really knows how to catch our attention. It's good stuff. It's good stuff. I mean, if you can't have fun while you're doing this, like, is it even worth it? You know, you gotta have fun. You gotta have fun.
Here, create pipeline resources. Every pipeline resource I see that is of type Git is just the name, just the URL to the Git repository.
So we don't actually want
Which
to.
I mean, I
use-
feel like probably would make sense. They abstract away that initial clone thing because like that's probably something that you're going to do most of the time, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's ultimately what's happening here. This is a shortcut to be saying you're probably going to have pipeline resources that carry Git repositories rather than have it be a string and you have to manually add a step to do the clone. They're going to add it as a type called Git and do the clone for you.
which is this guy, if it looks like it. Task, fetch repository, task references, a git clone. And then the parameters right here. You even give it a subdirectory too. Right?
V1, well, I guess V1 beta 1's not that old.
So I mean, I guess you can specify those things, but I don't think that you have to because I think if you give it as just an input as type Git, I think it'll just do that.
Yep.
But maybe
Okay.
like if you're cloning multiple or something, maybe you would want to like manually tweak those knobs or turn those knobs. You know what I mean?
So we don't
Yeah,
want.
that
We don't
also
need
might
any
be
of
an
this.
old example. I don't think we need any of that.
All right.
I think we're going to get that for free by having an input of type Git.
Okay. And then we use builda to build the thing.
You do need to change that line, the gen source / docker.gen to be your Docker file,
All right.
which is again where we keep going back to the problem of we have this small disconnect. We know we have a Git repo. We know that pipelines is going to clone that Git repo for us. We know that builda is going to run on the Docker file in that Git repo. How do we map those two so it's looking for the correct Docker file?
So the Git source is cloned to a local volume that's in that pod that is specified at the volume path of /workspace the name that you specify as the input for the Git task. So in our example, we have
gen source.
So we have source as the name. So it's like /workspace/source. So we get that for free by just specifying the input resources as type Git.
Cool. So that's where that directory came from. That in the one we deleted, that's where that directory came from.
And I guess remember that all of the pods that are running, well, sorry, all of the things that are running in this task are all running in the same pod. So they all share the same volume, stuff, volume mounts and all of that.
Okay, so this makes sense. So I'm looking at the example I pasted in. It has an input resource named source and of type Git. Now in the very first step, it sets its working directory to /workspace/source, which makes sense because that's the volume mount. And then it runs S2I in there, just basically since that's a working directory. So that maps up with what you're saying and why we don't see workspace/source written anyplace else, because we get that derived from the name of the Git input. That's why it's only ever referenced as the working dir, and we don't see an explicit volume created. Okay, cool. So JJ, move to the right a little bit, and before docker/cobol, you're going to want to do /working/source/ I'm guessing Docker Cobol is probably
/workspace not working.
Sorry, that's my bad.
/source.
Source is in one word.
Yes, and I think
because that's what you specified above as the name, right? So if you go up to the input, the name is source. Right, yeah. So you could change that if you wanted, but that's what it is. The resource spec input resource name.
Now the question is, I don't think he's going to need. You can probably delete that second one too.
Path context?
Yeah, I think so. Actually, you should leave it, but I'm pretty sure we don't need it. No, we don't need it. You should delete it. What are you listening to me for?
Yeah, because we're using the S2I.
Yeah, that was only using that S2I case. Now my question is, in the Docker file command, so 2 down from where you are, do we need the docker-cobol, or does it check out the source into that root directory? You know what I'm saying? So is it /workspace/source/docker-cobol/docker file, or is it just source/docker file?
Well, I imagine that they would do a Docker check, or it get checked out of this repository, right? Like just basically that. And then the actual
it'd be docker-cobol, source/docker/cobol, yeah.
So like what we have it or no?
I think. If it doesn't work, then we know what to fix.
With you guys, let's try it. My vote is that we actually need to remove the docker-cobol. I think it's going to check it out into that directory without keeping the project name, but that's speculation based on what I'm seeing. That's not necessarily me, doing anything.
So just apply it, right?
I'm trying to think if there's anything else we needed to change there. Why not? Yeah, we should be able to create that. We just need to give it a resource with the source.
Lines 27. Hmm?
That's really line 27?
Mm-hmm. Weird tabs.
Do set. Oh, I see we did that.
I'm not seeing any weird tabs or anything. 27.
All right, chat. What are you seeing that we're not seeing? Gen source, gen source. And it was a parsing command, right? So I haven't you have anything.
Yeah, what?
Parsing, converting gen. did not find expected dash. 27. So
you still have those two mounts at the bottom, or volumes at the bottom, I mean?
yep.
Yeah.
Security context. That's not far enough over, is it?
Yep, there it is.
Uh,
Friggin' YAML.
Stupid goddamn YAML. All right.
Honestly, we should
definitely
celebrate
wasn't
that only
line
took us
20.
like 3 minutes and not 20.
Yeah.
A literal one space bug. Yes.
Yep. All right. Here we go.
Cool. So what do we look like? We have the get checkout, which is the input.
Mhm.
We have a build, right?
Yep. Build step in there. This should produce an image. Is it even pushing the image someplace? Yeah, I just don't know where. Oh, outputs.resources.image.url. Okay.
Okay.
There's the push, which we're gonna tell it. Probably, I would assume the local
JJ's
image.
Docker Hub
We'll
account.
have to maybe build an image stream and that.
Oh, no, we're not going to push it.
Define an image stream.
I just want to build it. That's all I want to do. Like the first thing is we're going to check out the code and we're going to run build it against it. That's all I want to see first.
Okay. We got to delete that step out of the task we created that still had push in there.
I thought I did that.
Oh, did you? And I just
Oh,
missed
maybe
it.
you did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I missed
I
that
did.
too. Then, so there is only one step. Yeah. So the one
Yep.
step is build. We're
Yep.
building it, throwing
Oh,
it
yeah.
away.
Y'all
Nice.
aren't paying attention. Come on now. Come on.
That's
Oh, that's good
how
stuff.
that security context was messed up. I get it now. I understand.
There it is. There it is.
Okay.
All right. So now we can create a pipeline.
Now here's where I get fuzzy because I think we can, but I always, okay, try it. Because I get into issues where I don't have the resource created and it won't create properly and it gets kind of wonky for me. But I know you can create the pipeline before the resources, so.
Okay. So this is like
New pipeline.
COBOL Docker pipeline. Sure.
Yep. Spec
then-
under resources. You need get there. You're good. We don't need the image now, right? We
Correct.
will, but not now.
And then our task is build app.
That's fine.
The name is.
Shit, what did you call it? And I can pull that up.
Thank you.
S2I-COBOL, which is
That's two,
incorrectly named, but this is fine.
That's fine. And this is just task. And then the input is the source.
That's
And
the
then
input
we
that we
don't-
hand into it, and then apt-get maps to the pipeline resource. A lot of
That looks right.
indirection right there. Yeah, so we have to define apt-get points to your repo, which then
Mhm.
gets referenced as source and passed in. That's some redirection right there.
But we define that stuff using, well, you could define it using YAML or whatever, but like you could define it really easily in the console.
Well, no, we want to create a pipeline resource with all those things specific.
Just the one, the
To-
apt-get.
There we go.
I feel like there's other
So-
stuff that's automatically. No, that's right. We deleted that.
Um,
Will you type? I'm going to run for a quick bio break.
yeah, man. So this is this guy here. Sit here.
Yep.
That looks right, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now we need a task. No, do a pipeline run, don't we?
We have to run it. Yeah, that's what's next.
But there's no run button.
Go back to the pipeline. Go click in there for the pipeline.
Sorry.
So like, yeah, you could do that. I thought I was going to have you do the same thing, except like go to the drop down that's in the corner.
Got it. And then it has our COBOL S2I resource, just like we were expecting.
And it already has that filled in because we've specified
in the
like
pipeline resource.
the pipeline resource already, right? Yeah.
Ah, should have.
So what did we miss? Was that the directory? Invalid
Task
output.
declared required resources are missing from task run image.
Yes, so we have in our task definition an output resource named image that you deleted from the pipeline definition that called the task. So we should probably rip it out of the task too.
Oh yeah.
Hey, you want to delete
Good
it?
point.
Yay!
And probably the outputs too, right?
Son of a bitch. Oh, yeah, that's a good question. I'm curious if this is going to fail because why run it if there's no outputs? But we should be okay. And also, this outputs. We were talking earlier about why we had multiple steps in that task. I think we could have done them separately, but then we would have to map up the git checkout to an output and then have that be an input to the next task. Whereas if we had a couple of steps working in the same pod, we don't have to do that manual shuffling of shit around. We have them in that directory locally.
Yeah.
So being the people are starting to be like, well, VS Code, like Mofi's pointing out, VS Code, YAML, plugin, blah, blah, blah. There's something that I haven't quite remembered how to do yet in Vim, and that's code folding. That is something that we will be doing quite a bit as soon as I get my hands wrapped around that again, because we can fold. You can actually get Vim to recognize the blocks of like all the steps. So you can fold all the steps up to it. So if there's something off, it'll pop out because it's not underneath the correct line. So if I wanted to just do like resources, these two lines would roll into this resource, and then params would only be here. So there's some really cool stuff with code folding. I used to do it all the time when I was a Ruby developer, but I have forgotten how to do it. And trust me, with my Vim adventures, oh yes, it will
It's
be
like
better.
lesson 25. You got to get there first.
Is that built into Vim or is that an extension?
Vim folding? Oh no,
Yeah.
that's like one of the most powerful things inside here, dude. Vim folding.
It's built in. You have to like enable it or have the right thing. Yeah.
It is a slippery slope, my friend.
Toggle. And folds, this is just like your normal plus minus would do in VS Code, where it's going to pull up. Yeah, okay.
Mhm.
Pull up method definitions and things like that. Okay.
Yep.
This
So you
is where
gotta do
I
some-
side more with the chat, where I'm like, yeah, this shit in my graphical IDE is just done for me for free.
Mhm. It's all in here. It's just a little bit of configuration, and oh, so good. So good. Sorry.
Yeah, ZC closes a fold. Like, but you have to maybe add or turn it on. I don't know.
Yeah, it's all my memories are coming back of me being Vimy, I guess is a word for it. And it's just like, yes. Before you know it, I'll get all the markdown stuff working again how I wanted to do the folding on markdown. And then you've lost me. Then I'm off in like I'm writing like Vim script again. Like trust me, it gets real bad. I have learned Vim script the hard way, the actual book. So anyway, okay. So we'll do that and we'll push it back up. Oh, that's
What?
not right. What do we do?
Didn't like something.
Outputs dot read. Doing something we didn't delete from. Go back into. I'm curious if it's because we have it in something, if we just missed it. Yeah, here we go. In the outputs.resources.image.url. Oh shit! Yeah, we do need that because that's the name of the image we're building.
Oh yeah, that'll do
There's the
it.
tag. Although
So we have to.
we got thrown off because it was called URL. I think it had been called tagged. We probably would have picked up on that a bit quicker.
So we need outputs, and then that was resources, image.
Name is image, type is image.
Wait, what? You lost me.
There's a name as image and a type as an
Oh,
image,
wait, shit.
Ah, got it. Okay.
and you got to give it. Yeah, it's a list.
God, this Tmux thing is kind of badass for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, hold my beer, I got this.
Yep. Speaking of, we're coming up to 2 hours and 45 minutes.
It's funny, as I said that, I realized the same thing. You didn't have your drink in hand at 4 o'clock, so we missed that break.
Yep. Well, you know, we're actually getting places, right? Like, if anything, this is like a perfect culmination of all the streams we've done in the past. We had a guest, we went off on huge tangents, and we might actually get something fucking working. Like, it's a win, right?
We got 20 minutes.
Yeah. The thing is, I'm curious if we're going to know if it's working, because it's going to build it. It's going to build the image. It's going to live in the pod that immediately gets killed. I suppose if it doesn't fail, that's good. That's the only caveat to not having the push, is that nothing lives long enough for us to come back and check it.
We'll be able to see the actual output, though, right? Like,
You'll see some verbiage, and yeah. And again, if it doesn't fail, that we'll call that progress. And like you said, we'll add in the push. Like, you know, it's a progressive debugging thing.
So hold on, we specified the thing there. Now we need
We
to
still
like
gotta add
what,
the
specify an output in the
Yeah,
pipeline.
we need to create a pipeline resource for the output with that image information.
so this one, right?
No, that's the input get resource. Now we need an output resource.
Okay.
So type is image.
Type is image. Okay.
And params URL.
Oh, hold on. Sorry, say again. Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Where are we? Pipeline resource. Okay, so oh, I guess I can't do that. So delete. Oh wait, URL and revision. I think that's actually right. Params. Yeah. Okay, so you can delete revision.
Okay.
And then URL is going to be the actual. No, leave that. But then the value for it. Nope. No, name stays URL.
Why?
The value, instead of being a HTTP URL, is going to be our tag name. So Docker, you know, quay.io/jdob/ whatever :latest.
Like what you would do would be create an image stream on OpenShift, so you could push to the local OpenShift image registry.
You mean you don't need the image stream for that? You could just push directly into the registry if you use the right URL.
Yeah, do that. Or you could do that, but then you're gonna also like to do that, to make that work, what you have in now, you would have to add your credentials to quay.io as a secret into the Docker.
When we push it,
into
sure.
the thing, yeah.
We're not going to push it though. We're just.
But we're
build
not doing it. So
No, change that later. You know, you spelled latest wrong. Not that it really matters for this.
Did I
really?
Fake.
Yeah.
Did I really?
You wrote lastest.
Lastest.
Oh.
This is the lastest image I am ever building for this project.
I'm over the. I like it.
All right, so now we got to slap this pipeline resource onto the pipeline itself.
Yeah, we have to give it. Or
Then we're gonna have to
pipeline.
edit the pipeline to actually accept it too.
So I go to this guy.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Pipeline
And then just go to the
resource.
YAML.
No, YAML.
Yeah,
That
just
works
because
too.
so we have under resources, we have apt-get. We also need to create one for this image. So you can
Well,
use
you added it, right? What's the param name string? What's that? You just added that.
No. We added the output. Okay. We added it to the task. Now we need it in the pipeline. So that way.
Yeah.
pipeline resource,
makes
and then
sense.
we're going to map that later in tasks. So you can call this output dash image, just to make things a little bit easier to understand. The type is going to be an image,
Mhm.
and then go down